right, we are live. What's happening, everyone? Welcome to another episode of It All Depends podcast, the show where we share tactical and actionable insights for customer success manager. I'm your host, Prash, and I'm stoked to have you joining us. So my guest today, he is one of the coolest dudes in CS. I love his energy and the unique perspective that he brings to the CS table. I'm sure you've seen him around on LinkedIn with this fun and informative CS post. He's currently a CSM in LinkedIn and an ambassador for customer success snacks, and he's based in Amsterdam. I love the city. And he was also the top 100 customer success strategist this year. Diego, welcome. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Thank you, Prashant. And if I hear you saying all these things, I'm like, wow, did I really do that? But I'm excited to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
Awesome, man. Thanks for taking up time. All right, shall we get right into it? Okay, I really want to set up the stage. As you know, it all depends podcast, so it's crucial to set up the stage. If you could share with us your extensive customer success experience that you've had in the past. I know currently you're on LinkedIn, but could you talk more about the previous experiences you've had, the industry that you've been part of, and the differences in those industries as a customer success manager?
Yeah, sure. So I think time is really flying. I've been working in customer success for what, 5 years now? And I started in customer success, so end of 2019 at a small video conferencing company. So one of the people I know in my network reached out to me. I didn't know anything about customer success back then. He reached out to me and he told me like, "Hey, we have a role opening customer success, and I think it really suits you." So I was like, okay, could you tell me a little bit more? What exactly is a customer success manager? So we had a few conversations, and I thought, well, maybe this is something I can do. So I started at a video conferencing company, again, end of 2019, and you can imagine beginning of 2020
Yeah.
what happened. So it was a well, it was an experience. The whole world had to work from home, had to start adopting video conferencing. So I had to learn a lot about video conferencing and as a customer success manager. So yeah, fast forward 2 years later, I started to get the hang of what a customer success manager is. I started to follow my first success coaching course back then, level one. So was my
Cool.
first.
Shout out.
Yeah. So everyone, success coaching, it's a really good place to start. But after 2 years, I was like, I want to learn more. Again, it was a small company. I wanted to take that next step as a customer success manager, and I moved into fintech for 4 whole months
Oh, wow.
because I was like, nah, this is not for me. So moving from a video conferencing industry into fintech, I was like, no, this is not for me. So after 4 months, I decided to continue to a different company. So I went to a startup company, which was also in video, not video conferencing, but in video, because I was like, yeah, startup, you can learn a lot, you can make impact, And well, at that time, we got our son, so work-life balance didn't really match. And then LinkedIn came across. I was in conversation with a lot of other companies, as well as HubSpot. So we could have
Oh,
been
nice.
colleagues.
Oh, man. Dang it.
Um, but yeah, no, eventually, yeah, I decided to go for LinkedIn, and it has been 1.5 years now since I joined the company. And to this day, I still enjoy everything. There's a lot to learn. So yeah, that's in a nutshell my journey as a customer success manager.
Amazing. Yeah. It's been so interesting that the fintech the change in fintech really like exposed you to like different attributes, and you were like trying to test it out. I'm curious to know if you could like dig into like, because we don't talk as much, like we only talk about the good fits and not so much about like the bad fits, just for your professional, as a professional
Yeah.
person to you as a CSM. I'm just curious, like, what made you kind of realize that, oh, maybe this is not for me. I should like check out something else.
Yeah, so I think it's two things. So the first thing, and that was also a lesson for me, is that the company advertised as that it was a customer success manager role. And I think, if you really dig into the job descriptions, I think most of the companies nowadays, I think like, okay, we need to have a customer success manager as well because it's hot, it's trendy. We need to hire a CSM as well. And in this case, I think it was mainly customer support related. So that was my biggest lesson. Like, really understand the job description, ask thoughtful questions during the interview process. So yeah, I think it's a lesson we all have to go through. And
Yeah,
the second thing is, you know, if if you join a company as a CSM, I think having industry expertise, it's not a must, but it can really help you.
totally.
And if you start having conversations with your customers and they all talk about financial stuff, I was like, I just don't care about this. So you need to have some, how do you say it, some sort of a, is that how you say it, affinity. You need
Yeah,
to have,
yeah.
yeah. And in case you don't have it, it's gonna be a big challenge to succeed as a CSM. So those two things eventually led to, yeah, me leaving the company and pursuing a different role.
Yeah, no, totally makes sense. Like day in and day out, you're speaking to customers, and if you're not really enjoying those calls and the product that you're consulting them, yeah, it doesn't really make sense.
Not at
So yeah,
all.
thanks for sharing that, man. All right, let's get into the crux of the pod, the tactics and the insights that you have, which I'm super curious. You have an extensive experience as a CSM, Diego, clearly, and you know more than anyone that we have so much to do. We have so many variables, moving parts in our role. So prioritizing things can be pretty challenging. And I'm a big believer on Pareto's principle, the 20% input that results in the 80% output. So I'm curious to know, like, how do you prioritize as a CSM, and how have currently and how have you been doing in the past? Like, what insights do you have to share?
Yeah, yeah. So I just wanted to do a quick shout out to my previous colleague, Mick Weyer. So if you're listening to this, I'm calling him Mick Pareto because he was just a master of, applying the Pareto principle.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
but yeah, there are a few things, and yes, what you're saying is totally true. We have to prioritize a lot of different things. And if I look at how I'm applying the 80/20 rule, is it's a few things. So first of all, account planning. Um, that's one of my main focuses, is to take a step back. So on a quarterly basis,
Hmm.
take a step back and reflect on, okay, what does my book look like? What renewals are upcoming? What accounts are at risk? Where do I see growth opportunities? Which customers do I need to engage with? Because well, you could have read something in the news that could be a trigger to engage with the customer, because I don't know, they could let go of people, or they are
Hmm.
exploring new markets. So that could all help in prioritizing your book. So that's one thing, account planning. Another thing, I think success planning is also, well, which is part of our core job, is to create that plan with your customer. Because what I've noticed, and if you don't have a joint plan together with your customer, it's like doing a lot of things, but you don't know what exactly you're doing. And same goes for your customer, right? I mean, there's a lot of things, a lot of routes we can take, but in the end, we need to take the right route to get the success as fast as possible. So I think success planning is also another thing, just having that
Hmm.
conversation with your customer, set well, I think that's already 80% of the collaboration you have with your customer. Another thing is building relationships. So it's not only externally. I mean, it's important
Hmm.
to have a good relationship with your customers as well. But what we must not forget is our internal relationships as well, right? Because We
Mm.
work with a lot of different stakeholders. So depending on the organization you work and how big or small it is, uh, well, in my case, I work with a lot of different people. So we have consultants, we have support, we have sales, we have marketing, um, and I think the key is also to build your internal relationships. So you already know, like, okay, this is the case with my customer. Who do I need to go to? And if you already have those internal relationships, it makes your work a lot easier instead of, trying to figure out, okay, I have this, where should I go now, right?
Yeah.
And then I think, lastly, and I'm writing a lot about it, is doing research. If you know who you're dealing with, it makes your life a lot easier as a CSM. Starting to get more interest in AI, and I'm using AI a lot in my work, especially when doing research. So having done your research up front, I think also results. It is 80% of the collaboration with your customer.
Yeah, those are great points, Diego. I want to dig into the account planning piece. I know you mentioned you prioritize using, when the renewal is coming up. What other like metrics or areas do you see when prioritizing and when you're planning, when you're doing your account planning? Are you looking at the MRR they have or risk of churn? Like what other factors other than the renewal are
Mhm.
you looking at?
Yeah. So I think, yeah, renewal is typically something we look at because, well, we need to renew the account, of course.
Yeah,
We need to retain them. But besides that, it's also good to have a look at, in terms of prioritizing, how much money is a customer spending with us. I mean, in the end, you want to retain your biggest customers, of course. I mean, if
right.
you're only spending your time with your smallest customers and just leaving your biggest customers, well, it's not a good strategy, at least that's what I think. But of course, not only looking at risk accounts, but also looking at growth opportunities, because it can help you prioritize where you spend your time in terms of growth. So if you already can identify a few growth accounts within your book, it means that you can spend more time working on those accounts to eventually lead to. But I read an interesting post on LinkedIn recently, and to be honest, that is something I want to experiment with a little bit. I'm not sure who wrote the post, but also segmenting on your customer industry and customer outcomes, because the typical things we usually look at are ARR, renewal date, but if you can also bucket your customers in what they're looking for, or in what industry they are,
Oh,
it gives you the opportunity to have a more scaled approach. And I think, well, scaling, if you've read the report by Daphne from HubSpot, scaling is one of the top challenges. So we need to do more with less, right? But if you
yeah.
also know what industry your customers are and what outcomes they're looking for, you can also bucket those customers and then apply a more skilled approach. So I think that's also an interesting one to look into if you're planning your book, to see the segments per industry and also the outcomes they're looking for.
Yeah, the outcome is that'll be interesting. I've never thought about like segmenting based on their desired outcome. That'll be interesting. I'll test it out, see how that goes. Moving on to the success planning that you mentioned, Diego, do you have like a certain template that you use or certain, way you approach those success planning?
Yeah, so right now we are a bit spoiled in the tools we have. Just gotta be honest. Yeah, there are a few templates we use, and we also have the option to to input certain data points aligned to those customer outcomes. We can even benchmark them. So yeah, we have templates, but I mean, I've also work at startup companies, smaller
Mhm.
companies, like I've mentioned before, where this was not the case. So, we just had to build something from scratch. Sometimes it was just a spreadsheet. Well, I mean, in the end, it doesn't really matter what kind of template you use. I think the most important thing is that you document what exactly it is that your customer is looking for. So if you're using a Word file or a spreadsheet, it doesn't matter. In the end, what matters is that you help your customers reach their goals and also understand their goals. So, well, I'm in a position that I have templates, but if you don't have it, then just document it somewhere.
Cool, cool. No, that's a good call out on like documenting, like just starting with the basic on just documenting it and then probably building on top of that and then scaling it as we spoke to the wider team. Uh, I know you mentioned on building relationships, and it was a great call out on like building internal relationship. So you are resourceful, and you have optimized that relationship internally, so you can help customers better. My next question would be like, I know, building relationship is clearly one of your skill set. Like what other skill set do you think directly results in your performance as a CSM internally?
Yeah, so I think we've covered a few of them already. So indeed, relationship building, I think, is a key skill for customer success managers. Same for prioritizing, but I think also, and I think I mentioned it already. Researching, I think, is a well. Can we say that it's yeah? I think definitely that's a skill that customer success managers have to need to have, right? I mean, we use researching probably in almost all day. I mean, we have to research the news, for example, like what's happening within our customers' industry, or what is happening within our customers' organization, or maybe even our point of contact. So that is one thing. Well, I mean, it's not really researching, but if you're analyzing your customers' data, you're also doing your research. And I think with AI right now, that is becoming a lot more easier. So I think researching is also a key skill for customer success managers.
Because I remember, Diego, you shared a bunch of tools in one of your posts with regards to research. Or maybe it was just LinkedIn, I think, that you were showing different filters on how to kind of research on some POCs. I'm not sure if you recollect what you were sharing. Do you?
Well, I'm not 100% sure, but what I usually share about is how to use Copilot, for example, in researching.
Oh, right. I think it might be that. Yeah.
But there are probably a ton of different tools you can research. There are people out there that are really doing really cool things. So if you have any tips about who to follow regarding AI, I'm open to learn. But I think it also, and that has to do with the second skill, is being curious. So curiosity is also, I think, a skill that is really important, because if you lose your curiosity, then yeah, um it's a big pitfall, I think. I think Bob London, he is like
Yeah.
a really a good person to follow on LinkedIn, because I think he shares good points regarding having conversations with your customers by asking questions. Well, um, not talking as much, just let your customer do the talking, but because well, you don't learn any new things if you only talk, right? So I think curiosity is a second thing, and I think another one, and that I it it I had to practice this skill, and that was delegating. So I came from, again, companies that were very small, so I had to do everything myself, right? So working at a startup, you are expected to do, well, customer success, support, sometimes even sales. So you're expected to do everything. If you move from a small company to a big company, you suddenly have resources. So I was like, okay, so I don't have to do everything myself anymore, right? I have people that can help me, that I can delegate tasks to. So I think delegating in my current role is also a key skill that I need, because I can't know everything. I just need to rely on people that know their stuff, and connect those people within my customer's business. So I think that's the other one I would like to add, delegating.
I'm glad you mentioned the fact that a CSM wouldn't know every answer to a customer question. It's oftentimes like it's new CSMs would actually fall into that, you know, misconception of like, oh, I think I need to know everything. If I don't know everything, I'm not a good CSM. But it's really about resourcefulness, like you mentioned, and getting those answers to the customers eventually. It's what the skill set is about, more so than knowing, which you will never. So yeah, that's a
Exactly.
good
And
one.
I think also that's why I find it so important to build those relationships, right? Because again, I can't know everything. So I need to know who knows the answer. So if you're starting at a new company, I would highly recommend just connecting with the people that you're going to work closely together with. Because in the end, you'll need them. And yeah, so definitely start working on your
Yeah,
relationships
and
if you haven't.
and on that, Diego, do you have like any specific ways other than coffee chats that you connect with those cross-functional teams and build a relationship?
Yeah, so I think coffee chats is definitely one of the things you have to do. So, just to give you an example, when I started an organization and I have to work closely with new cross functionals, I typically just want to invite them and go out for lunch, not in the office, but just go out of the office because I think it's really important to build the relationship on a personal level first. Because the professional things will get there, but I want to get
Hmm.
to know you on a personal level first. Where do you live? Do you have any kids? What are your hobbies? What kind of communication method do you prefer? Like, just tell me that, and once I know that, we can start talk business after that. So that is usually the first thing I do. Just take my colleague out for lunch, and I think what also helps, and it has to do with what I just mentioned, is also, and that's maybe a personal thing. I also like to share what's happening in my life, because what's happening in my private life also affects me professionally. So if there's
Right.
anything happening, I just share it. Like, hey, for example, my kids are sick. You need to take over, or
Hmm.
just an example. And again, I think it's really important to know people on a personal level. Once I know what their interests are, I can also share any relevant information with them that, I don't know, helps them grow personally as well. So if I know that someone is interested in AI, or they like playing poker, or I don't know, I can tie those things back based on what I hear or learn. So, but my main point is start to get your colleagues on a personal level.
Nice, nice. No, thanks for sharing that. Even I'm kind of guilty of not doing that as often cross-functionally. I do that more with, CSM to CSM, maybe contract manager because I work super closely with them. I think I should do that more with sales folks, especially. Talking about sales, can we dig into like the best practices? Like it's not talked about as much as I would. Uh, the relationship between a CSM and a sales rep on, what does the dynamic look like? What are the best practices? So would love to kind of get your take on like how throughout your experience, what have you learned working along with sales as a CSM and, like what are the best practices you think that would be helpful?
Yeah, yeah. So I think if you read the LinkedIn content, there's a lot of content about there. Discussing sales versus customer success,
Yeah,
or sales and customer success. I think it really depends on the organization, but I think sales is probably one of the most vital cross functionals that we have to collaborate with. I know in some organizations, CSMs are also responsible for upsell and cross sell. So typically they don't have a sales partner to collaborate with. I do work with a sales partner, and I think that's one of the best collaborations to have. Because while I think it's important to have a commercial mindset, and again, this is just my opinion, it's better to have that partner that can help you close that deal while we as CSMs spot that opportunity. So I think as a best practice, first of all, it's important to align with your sales partner. Like, what are your priorities? What are you focused on? What numbers do you own? How much is your quota for this quarter, for the year? Because in the end, it's they are also a customer in some way. It's an internal customer. So it's a bit of success planning you're doing with your sales partner as well. And I think if you know that, if you know their priorities, where they are focusing, you can also help them achieve their goals. And what I've also noticed is that if you don't speak the same language, so in the end they talk money, and if you want to speak the same language as sales, we should also talk money. And typically, well, I think there's a change in trend coming now that TSM teams are now measured on net revenue retention, gross revenue retention. But if you don't have those numbers, it's still important to align with your sales partner and also try to talk money. And the way I like to do it is to use customer success qualified leads, so CSQLs. So if you spot an opportunity, for example, I mean, we have conversations with customers. Sometimes we even know the customer better than a sales partner does. We spot an opportunity, we just log it in the system, discuss it with sales partner, like, hey, there's an opportunity here. This is what I've discovered. Let's have a follow-up conversation with this customer and dig a little bit deeper. And when that has been closed, then we're helping our customer, we're helping sales, we're helping ourselves as well, because we can also talk money now.
Nice. No, those are good call outs, especially on the, getting to know what their priorities are, what their metrics are, getting to speak their language. It's so much in a sense like you just have to CSM them, in that term, like just CSMing, your sales rep or your support rep, your internal colleagues. There's so much like overlap in our role that we can, translate that into internal relationships. So yeah, no, thanks for sharing that, Diego. I'm always excited to know about my guest on the specific habits. I know you're a family man, you have two little ones at home. So I'm curious to know, like, what sort of habit on your day-to-day do you have? How do you manage your family? How do you manage your book and all that stuff? So yeah.
Oh, sometimes I ask myself that question, like, how do I do it? Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I think we all have specific habits. So looking on a personal note first. So what I do outside of work, if you've been following me for a while on LinkedIn, you've probably noticed that I like Japan. So it's really high on my bucket list to go to Japan this year. So what I do on a daily basis, I practice my Japanese every day. It doesn't matter if it's only 1 minute, 5 minutes, but I practice it every day.
I
And
know. I remember you sharing the Duolingo. You had some record or something like that, right?
yeah, I
Never
hit my
missed a day.
I hit
Crazy.
my 1 year streak, so I'm gonna
Awesome.
continue to my second year streak.
Cool, man.
But yeah, so that is one thing, and I have to give big credits to the book Atomic Habits. That was a game changer for me. So the year before, I was like, I have to practice every hour, or sorry, every day for an hour or 2 hours, and I wasn't consistent. So last year I changed my strategy. I was like, just practice for 2-3 minutes a day, and here I am. I mean, I speak Japanese like a 2-year-old, but I can't read it, I can't speak it, so it's already a win. So that's one of my habits. I also like to read every morning. So when my kids are having breakfast, I just like to read a few pages, just to
Oh,
I think it's important to read books, but also looking at time. I mean, I can't read like a book in an entire day. So I just need to stay consistent, just like I practice my Japanese. Or reading is another
And,
thing.
and are those books always CS related or something else as well?
So yeah, I posted my book list quite recently. So there are a few Japanese related books like Wabi Sabi, Ikigai, Maneki Neko, and the book I'm
Hmm.
reading right now, Gambate, which is also I can highly recommend reading that one.
Okay, cool.
But also just self-development books. So as I mentioned, Atomic Habits is really a game changer, but also Switch and Never Split the Difference. So those
Mhm.
type of books, but also customer success related books. Yeah, definitely.
Got it.
Um, and what else? Oh yeah, of course, I'm on LinkedIn every day, so I read
So good.
LinkedIn content just to stay updated, just to learn new things, engage with people. And another thing, and I think that's really important. I haven't done it lately because of the weather here, but during summer after lunch, I go out for a walk, for a 15-minute walk, just to get some fresh air, just to stretch my legs a little bit. Yeah, that's what I do personally. And then looking professionally, Monday that is usually my prep week. So it just
Okay.
gives me the opportunity to have a look at, okay, what is upcoming this week, maybe even the week after, so I can already start preparing decks, for example. So that is usually my prep week. I don't like to use my Mondays for customer meetings. And then Friday, that is usually my learning day. So of course we
Cool.
have access to LinkedIn Learning, so I
Yes.
can upskill myself, and I think it's really important. Also because AI is really trending, so I'm following a lot of courses regarding AI just to prepare myself for the future. And I think and one and that is, I don't know if other people do it as well. Back-to-back meetings. So I've done that. Like when I started as a CSM, I was like, oh, I need to speak with all my customers, and I need to have my calendar full with these customer meetings back to back. And now, no, no. I just I keep 30 minutes in between just to get something to drink, just to prepare for my next meeting, just to get a bit of headspace. So that's also a habit. Don't schedule back-to-back meetings because it's unproductive and it only gives you stress.
Yeah, no, totally. This Wednesday, I had like five back to back. I was like, how did I let this happen? Like, why is this on my calendar? So yeah, that's a good reminder. And it gets exhausting at the end of the day. It's like, oh, I don't want to talk to anyone after these back to back calls.
Do you just share your link with people so that they can book a time slot?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
but then they can't book it between 15. It's just like sometimes they're like urgent queries or things like that. So I have to like, put them in. So it was just one of those days.
yeah,
But yeah, yeah, best to avoid that for
yeah,
sure. Awesome. Uh, you know how we've spoken about all these best practices, all these tactics and insights that you day in and day out execute, Diego. But it doesn't always work. You know what I mean? Like there's times that we fail as CSMs. So I'm curious if you're open to share like a journey that you actually uh, didn't didn't make it on what your goal was and what came out of it essentially.
yeah. So I think it's yeah, it's a utopia that we as CSMs are always successful. I think there are a lot of failure stories we can share as well. Maybe it's an idea for a next post.
Actually, yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I recall very clearly that I was new at a company when I worked there as a CSM, and so this customer reached out, telling me that they had an issue, and because I was new at the company, I was just eager to hop on that call, and I thought I was able to investigate that issue, right, and just to get a better understanding of what to do with this customer. So I quickly noticed that the issue, it was more technical than I expected, and I
Hmm.
didn't have the technical expertise to ask any relevant questions related to that issue. Yeah, and the customer noticed that I didn't, well, had the relevant experience to help solve this. So I got some pushback, and that was my lesson immediately. When you have these type of issues, you have to delegate it to, if you have the right resources. I mean, if you don't have it, then, well, go and find the right people to connect with. But what I've learned here is that I should have immediately escalated this to our support team, because I didn't know exactly what to do. But since this was a failure, I was able to turn it around. And then a few months later, there was a switching point of contact, which opened up an opportunity. Long story short, they eventually grew their contract. So it ended up very well. But the lesson I learned here was, and I think I covered it during the skills, is, well, being able to delegate, because I wasn't able to solve this, so I had to delegate this to another team or person.
Yeah, no, totally. Like it, thanks for sharing that. It brings connects back to a lot of things that you said on, being resourceful, delegating, uh, and to back that off, like, building those relationship internally so you can be resourceful and delegate. You know what I mean? So it kind of brings, circle backs to all that you shared. But no, thanks for sharing that, Diego. Super helpful. We're almost at the end of the pod. I always want to ask my guest, because I want to keep this circle moving. Like, which you personally would like, which CSM would you like me to have as the next guest in the pod?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this because I have a lot of people in my network that are in customer success, but I want to have Jim Smits as a next guest. And let me just, there's a bit of a story behind this. So Jim Smits and
Yeah.
we met through the community of success coaching. So when I just started as a CSM, we connected, and he was basically my coach, my mentor back then. So we go way back. And even now, we still meet now and then just to have a chat, like, hey, how it's going, and what we're both up to. So yeah, Jim Smits
All
would be
right.
a cool next guest.
Cool, James. If you're listening to this, I'm going to reach out to you on LinkedIn and get you on the pod. But Diego, again, big thanks for taking your time to do this. I'm sure, like the folks listening to this have gleaned a lot from today's discussion and found it as insightful as I did. But yeah, to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of It All Depends Pod. Oh, before I forget, Diego, I know you have a few resources that you would like to share. Do you want to call out any of the resources that you have?
Oh yeah, yeah. So one of the resources, it is a free resource, I have made available, is the CSM Starter Guide. So last year in Feb, I decided to work on this resource because when I started in customer success, I didn't know anything about it, and I had no one to teach me. So I was like, I want to give people the resources to help them get started in customer success. So if you're looking to transition into customer success, or if you want to just read a little bit more about customer success, head over to Gumroad and check out the CSM Starter Guide, and you can download it for free.
Perfect. I'll drop it in the show notes where you guys can check it out. But do follow Diego on LinkedIn. He has a very fun way of sharing very informative, CS insights and thoughts. So do follow him up. But again, thanks for being here, Diego. Appreciate you. But yeah, folks, listening to this, I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Cheers.